Before I start, I just want to tell you what peace means to me. Peace for me is living without the fear of violence and having the agency and autonomy to make decisions and choices about my life. I am Priskila Arulpragasam, a student at the UNC School of Social Work, a social worker and advocate for reproductive justice and gender equity from Sri Lanka. Today, I want to share with you about the healing and community I found in fabric and art. Fabric is an everyday item, interconnected and intertwined in our lives. It can be a powerful expression of identity and used not only to define oneself, but also to resist, challenge norms, and spark change in the community. My very first memories of fabric was seeing my mother and grandmother wear beautiful saris and also seeing them work with fabric in the sewing machine and doing different kinds of sewing. And as a child, I was told to learn sewing because it would be a very useful skill for a girl. And just this association of it with a gender role just made me hate or dislike sewing. I was like, I am not sewing. You tell me something to do. You ask me to do something because I'm a girl, I'm never doing it. And that was me as a child. But as I grew, I worked with communities in Sri Lanka and saw how sewing skills empowered women from urban slum communities who are facing domestic violence. It was also something that created livelihoods for rural women who are working in garment factories. And I also started seeing sewing and fabric as a form of art and expression. And coming to UNC, I got to get something important. So coming to UNC, I decided to lean into fabric and sewing for a class assignment. The assignment required us to reflect on what oppression and resistance meant to us and what our experience about it was. So I created this rag doll to symbolize how often in this world a woman's body is wrapped in violence and systemic oppression. And this was mainly based on my own personal experiences and the experiences of women I worked with in my country and in my region. And when I was thinking of what I should work on for this Rotary Peace Conference presentation, I wanted to expand on this idea of fabric and violence against women. Because fabric holds so much more than what meets the eyes. The story I tell you today is a story of resilience, healing, and hope. After coming to North Carolina, I learned about an organization called Kiran that works with survivors of domestic violence from South Asian communities. Mostly immigrant men and women who came into these countries with hopes and dreams for a better future. I started volunteering with Kiran, and for the project, I approached Kiran and asked if I could work with them on this project. And they happily agreed. But as a student, I knew I couldn't do this on my own. I needed more support and guidance. And that's when I walked into Laurie's office. Laurie Campbell is a professor at the School of Social Work who uses art-based healing approaches. And she was very willing and happy to collaborate with me to organize an art workshop that centered healing and storytelling using fabric. Here's the fabric that we created together in this workshop with 10 women and 7 children who have experienced domestic violence. This piece carries stories of hope, stories of dreams, and resilience and healing. We started our workshop with the participants by asking them to reflect on their memory of fabric. And at this point, I want to call you to think a little bit about what your favorite piece of fabric is and what kind of memories does it hold for you. One of the respondents said that her memories of fabric was how her clothes were torn and ripped off her body in her marriage. She says that one day she dreams of collecting all these pieces of torn clothes and putting them together to make it something more beautiful. This set the foundation for our discussion because fabric is powerful. You can rip it into 100 pieces, but you can still pick up those pieces and create something even more beautiful. You can stitch it together, you can paste it together and create something more beautiful. With this, we directed our conversation around healing, and we invited participants to pick from the wide range of fabric and materials that we made available to them and asked them to create a pattern or image that represented or that they saw as healing, what they envisioned healing to look like. And here are some of the stories that were shared with us. Taking a stand against an abuser and stepping out of that situation in a foreign land comes with many, many battles. One is the battle for survival, the battle for custody of children, the battle with divorce, and also the battle with immigration if you are dependent on your spouse. One of the participants stated that, me and my daughter, we are together amidst whatever life throws at us. And she is fighting the battle of custody for her daughter. People often come into this country with big hopes and big dreams. And incidents like domestic violence shatter these dreams. I want to be like a princess again and have a beautiful and colorful life, is what one of the participants said. The idea of family is a home with a father, a mother, and children. This is what the world calls as ideal. But I wasn't happy in this place. I had to break away from that. And today, I am happy here with my children. I may not have what the world calls an ideal family, but this is a happy place for me. And this mother created this drawing with her children, with her two daughters. Often, we are unable to make decisions or choices about our life and our bodies. I want to make decisions and choices in my life. That's why I have placed these pieces of fabric and buttons to symbolize my choices and my ability to make decisions for myself. These are some of the many stories that were shared. And this fabric that you see here today is a reminder and symbol of resilience, hope, and peace. Statistics and data often makes the affected individuals invisible. The global data says that 1 in 3 women have faced some form of partner or non-partner violence in their lifetime. 1 in 3. They are sitting amongst us. They may be us. We see them every day on the roads, in the grocery stores. And these are the stories of these 1 in 3. And there are many, many more untold stories. Peace and violence cannot coexist. And one tool or approach to talk about this form of violence that often remains invisible in our community is art. Communities have used this as a tool of storytelling and to communicate the impact of various social issues for a long time. And I would like to share with you some examples. This might be something that most of you are familiar with. In the 1980s, at the peak of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, this quilt was created by community members. It was a way of channeling the national anger and grief and loss families and individuals experienced. And till today, this remains one of the world's largest community arts projects, acting as a massive living monument to the lives lost to the HIV/AIDS epidemic. This was first displayed in October 1987 in the National Mall in Washington, D.C., featuring 1,920 panels. That is 1,920 stories, 1,920 lives lost. Here's something very close to home, right here in Durham. the Durham Homicide and Victims of Violent Death Memorial Quilt. This is an accounting of every murder victim in the Durham County since 1994. And as of late 2024, it consists of over 1,000 panels, which is about roughly 33 murders every year. This is an art initiative led by an artist and collaboratively done with the community. Fabric tells us a story. It's a form of legible data. It tells the story behind numbers. 1,000 might look like just a number, but 1,000 panels on a quilt tells us a story and communicates the impact. With this piece here, I want to call you to reflect and see an alternative form of peace building that is through art and other community-centered processes. While peace building can happen in the United Nations, in national and international organizations with big project proposals, million-dollar budgets, and large infrastructure and experts, it's also important to include in peace building local communities and those directly affected in creative and therapeutic ways. Art is one such creative and therapeutic tool that can bring communities together to heal trauma and to create peace collectively. It is also a community-based research tool that can create opportunities for the real subject matter experts, that is the affected community, to engage in knowledge production and research. Art is healing. Healing is in the movement of our hands and creating what we envision. Healing is in the expression of our pain and grief in creative ways that gives a new meaning to it. Healing is in the memorialization of the pain and grief and sharing it with agency and autonomy. Till I came here, I did not know that this form of knowledge production and research is possible. I did not think a hobby that I had can be a tool for peace building or a community-based research method. The School of Social Work taught me how I can engage the people I work with in an empowering way that recognizes their agency and autonomy. And I want to recognize Dr. Shoa, who taught us this in our class, and someone who made me think more about engaging communities. The women I worked with shared with me how difficult it can be to seek support for domestic violence. And because the process of seeking legal services, safe shelters, custody for children, and immigration processes often feels like they are losing their self-respect and dignity. These experiences tear them apart, but they choose to rebuild and feel whole again with the support of organizations like Kiran. Today, I call on you to look at healing-centered approaches as a form of peace building in your projects and programs. Invest in art-based and creative approaches as valid tools for trauma healing and peace building. Provide flexible and long-term fundings that allow grassroots organizations to respond to real needs of the community. Direct resources to organizations like Kiran that are led and serving affected communities, not just larger institutions. Today, with this sari and these stitches, I, along with these women, reclaim our identity and narratives and experiences of gender-based violence and discrimination to tell our stories with agency and autonomy. And I call on you to create such spaces in your clubs and communities. The quilt I produced with these women, this quilt was mostly curated by me, and the artwork was done by the women I work with, will be displayed outside. And I invite you to stop by and reflect on these stories. Thank you.